Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are putting aside the history books and, the geopolitical crises to analyze something equally enduring and arguably just as complex: The Simpsons.
And we have a fascinating stack of sources in front of us. I mean, this includes original press kits from the early 90s, some really rigorous academic content analyses.
The ones that treat the show as a key text in postmodernism, right?
Exactly. And then decades of news articles covering every major controversy, every production secret you can imagine.
That's right. And our mission today is to really try and understand the greatest paradox of Springfield. How did a show that was first introduced as this controversial, anti-establishment, brat, terrible, epitomized by Bart Simpson, how did it manage to sustain that anarchic, anti-authority voice while simultaneously growing into a multi-billion-dollar celebrated cultural institution now guaranteed to run through its 40th season?
It's a study in cultural permanence and, frankly, strategic genius. We are going to peel back the yellow paint, so to speak, to really examine the complex infrastructure that allows this show to even exist.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, it means diving into its strange 6-month creative pipeline, the deep mathematics hidden in Homer's background, of all places, and the serious international fallout caused by jokes that, to us, might just seem like standard satire.
And the opening hook here is just the sheer magnitude of its longevity. Fox and Disney just announced a monumental mega deal renewing the series all the way through the 2028-2029 television season.
It's incredible.
So we're not just looking at a sitcom anymore. We're examining a cultural landmark that seems determined, really, never to end.
Okay, let's unpack this architecture of longevity because the timeline itself is absolutely staggering. We have to start with the show's pretty humble origins as mere animated shorts.
Right.
These weren't even full episodes yet. They were just shorts running during the Tracey Ullman Show, starting way back in 1987. And that's the key precursor, Those chaotic, really roughly drawn shorts laid the groundwork for the characters, but when the half-hour series premiered on December 17th, 1989, it was instantly clear they had something special.
Something that transcended the format.
It really did. They established themselves as the edgy, sort of counter-programming alternative to the traditional family sitcoms on the other networks.
And speaking of those origins, Tracey Ullman herself, she definitely saw the writing on the wall. As the show just exploded into this global sensation, a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, she felt she was due a piece of that action.
Oh, absolutely. She famously filed a lawsuit against Fox.
Right.
She did.
Yeah.
And she used this marvelous quote in her legal filing, claiming that she had, and I'm quoting here, breastfed the yellow people.
I love that quote. It's so evocative.
It is. It implies her show was the incubator that nurtured The Simpsons into existence. And while the courts, ultimately rejected her claim, the lawsuit itself illustrates just how quickly this property became financially invaluable.
Yeah, it was already capable of generating major litigation based on just implied ownership.
Exactly.
It also highlights the chaotic start of production. We often forget that even that first season was messy. The series premiere aired in December 1989. That was Simpsons roasting on an open fire.
The Christmas special. Yeah.
But the first actual full-length episode that was produced, a title called Some Enchanted Evening, it actually aired last in season 1, not until May of 1990.
And that delay was entirely due to animation problems. The production company at the time, Klasky Sopo, they initially struggled to translate that short format into a full, consistent television show. It required significant retooling.
So this early messiness, it really stands in stark contrast to the highly systematized, incredibly structured pipeline that defines this show today.
And that pipeline is crucial for understanding the product. The sources confirm that The Simpsons takes approximately 6 months to produce a single episode.
6 months.
From script finalization to broadcast. And that 6-month lag is a strategic choice, whether it was intentional or just, inherited from the animation process.
On one hand, it guarantees that the show can almost never comment on truly current events. If a major political scandal breaks today,
The Simpsons won't be joking about it until well into next year.
So what's the benefit of that lag? Because when you look at a show like South Park, which has that famously quick production cycle that lets them mock events within days,
Right.
The Simpsons seems, hopelessly behind.
Well, the benefit is density and timelessness. Because they know the jokes need to survive for half a year without becoming dated, The writers are sort of forced to focus on cultural truths, literary allusions, character dynamics, rather than just cheap headlines.
So it's a feature, not a bug.
I think so. This lengthy process allows for layers of humor, the visual gags, the jokes in the background, the hidden references that make episodes so endlessly rewatchable. It ensures the writing is tighter because it has to be universal.
It truly is now the longest-running primetime scripted series in TV history. And that April 2, 2025 renewal announcement. It's just mind-boggling, securing season 37 through 2028, 2029.
With 15 episodes per season, yeah.
It's just hard to imagine television without it at this point.
And that longevity is managed by a very, very stable creative hierarchy. You have Matt Groening and James L. Brooks as these eternal creative consultants and executive producers. They ensure the baseline vision remains intact.
But the day-to-day is run by a showrunner.
Right. The operational reality is managed by a showrunner, people like Al Jean or Matt Selman, who handle the day-to-day writing and production flow.
But the real unsung hero in establishing that original system was Sam Simon. He assembled that iconic original writing staff, John Swartzwelder, John Vitti, George Miles.
Legendary names.
He was the force driving the early scripts, but he left in 1993 because of, well, intense creative friction with Groening and Brooks.
Simon might have left the writer's room, but he absolutely won the financial war. He negotiated what is widely considered one of the best severance deals in television history.
I've heard about this.
He retained an executive producer credit and a share of the profits every single year until his death in 2015. He was receiving millions annually for decades, long after he had any creative input.
Wow.
That level of foresight in a contract is it's remarkable.
Now let's talk about the voices, because they are the physical, the auditory soul of Springfield. The 6 main cast members, Dan Castellaneta, Julie Kavner, Nancy Cartwright, Yeardley Smith, Hank Azaria, and Harry Shearer.
They voice nearly the entire town.
The whole town. And they are rightly recognized as the most highly paid voice actors in history.
Well, they're essentially doing the work of an entire ensemble cast. And they didn't just read lines, they created defining cultural sounds. Dan Castellaneta's Doe, for instance, is far more complex than it seems.
And the lore here is fascinating. He based that famous sound on James Finlayson, an actor from Laurel and Hardy comedies.
Right, who would do this long, drawn-out sort of whining doo-hoo.
Exactly. But Castellaneta shortened it, he tightened it, making it that explosive signature moment we all recognize today, and apparently that was at the suggestion of the writing staff.
So it was a collaborative evolution of an inherited piece of comedy.
Yeah. Then there is Nancy Cartwright. It's legendary that she originally auditioned for Lisa.
The sensible, overachieving Lisa?
Can you imagine? But she spotted the description of Bart. Devious, underachieving, school-hating, irreverent, and clever. And she just recognized that her voice was perfect for that mischievous energy.
And she took the job as Bart right there on the spot. It was a case of an actor just instinctively knowing where they fit best.
The character origins are often full of these strange little backstories. Like, consider Hank Azaria's Dr. Nick Riviera.
Okay.
Azaria based the voice on a direct impression of Ricky Ricardo from I Love Lucy.
Hi, everybody.
That's the one.
Yeah.
But the visual identity of the character completely diverged from the voice origin. The animators who heard the voice mistakenly thought Azaria was impersonating Gabor Supo, the co-founder of the animation studio.
No way.
So they physically modeled Dr. Nick after Supo. The voice and the face have 2 separate, totally unrelated origins.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
And then you have the famous mob subplot. Louis, the recurring mafia gangster who works for Fat Tony, is voiced by Castellaneta.
Who based the voice on Joe Pesci.
And this connection to the organized crime genre actually led to a massive legal headache for the show. A man named Frank Severo, who played the character Frank Carbone in Goodfellas,
Right.
he claimed that Louis was based specifically on him, not just, generically based on Pesci or the genre as a whole.
So he filed a staggering lawsuit. I think it was for $250 million.
It was. He claimed the link was proved by the fact that some of the show's writers lived next door to him while Goodfellas was being developed.
That's a bit of a stretch.
It's a classic piece of meta Springfield drama, but the judge was not amused. The case was thrown out, with the court ruling that Louis was a general parody and satire of mobster archetypes, not a specific infringement on Severo's character.
And finally, we have to address the most significant casting shift in the show's history, which happened very recently, starting in 2020. This was a direct response to cultural movements and social critique.
Right, specifically the Black Lives Matter protests.
Fox announced a new policy. Recurring characters of color would no longer be voiced by white actors. This decision was a profound acknowledgement of decades of conversations around representation happening in real time 30 years into the series run.
And this led to immediate, tangible changes starting in season 32. Carl Carlson, a black character, was previously voiced by Azaria.
And is now voiced by Alex Dizzard.
We also saw changes to characters like Bumblebee Man, the Spanish-speaking Latino character who is a parody of the Mexican television icon El Chapulín Colorado.
Chespirito.
That's right. He was also previously voiced by Azaria and is now voiced by Eric Lopez.
And Dr. Hibbert, another key black character, previously voiced by Harry Shearer, is now voiced by Kevin Michael Richardson.
These decisions really showcase the tension, the tension between preserving the historical voices that define the show and addressing contemporary ethical and cultural expectations.
It's a big deal. The fact that an IP as entrenched as The Simpsons made these changes is highly indicative of the modern media landscape.
Moving into Section 2, let's get into the academic analysis. Because critics and scholars don't just call The Simpsons a successful cartoon, they describe it as a postmodern masterpiece.
They do.
For a listener who isn't steeped in literary theory, what does that actually mean in the context of an animated sitcom?
Well, postmodernism in media, it essentially means the work is self-aware, it's fragmented, and it uses existing texts, pop culture, history, art as its raw material, rather than trying to create some unified original reality.
Oh, yeah.
And The Simpsons is a formal exemplar of this on television because it constantly utilizes irony, paradox, and, most importantly, intertextuality, the weaving together of all these references. So it's not just telling jokes. It's telling jokes about the history of jokes and about culture and media itself.
Precisely. It skillfully uses irony and satire, differentiating itself from traditional animated series that might just, deliver sight gags. The Simpsons effortlessly incorporates high culture references to opera, classic literature, philosophical concepts, right next to low culture.
Like cartoons and beer commercials.
Exactly, all within the same narrative framework. It creates this seamless pastiche.
The sources even argue that this show proves a sort of philosophical point about modern culture. That many of our greatest, most recognizable cultural icons in the postmodern age, like the Simpsons family, are not real people. They're fictional constructions that hold immense social weight.
And that weight manifested early and intensely with Bart Simpson. He wasn't just a popular character, he was an instant cultural flashpoint. His rebellious image, defined by catchphrases like "eat my shorts" and "cowabunga."
It led to a full-blown moral panic among parental groups. Schools actually outlawed Bart merchandise.
They did. But the show survived that moral panic because fans argued that despite the family's dysfunction, they were actually, at their core, deeply loving and tuned into each other.
The satire was aimed outward, not inward at the family structure itself.
And the high watermark of Bart's influence came at the end of 1990. He was featured on the cover of Time magazine on December 31st, defining the decade to come.
And even more incredibly, in 1998, Bart was the only fictional character included in Time's list of the 100 most influential people of the century.
It's a profound statement about the power of fictional icons in our postmodern landscape.
The show's reputation for this intertextual richness is what makes it so dense and rewatchable. It encourages the audience to be active participants. You have to spot the allusions to get the full flavor of the joke.
And the range is just astronomical. We're talking about references spanning the Bible and other sacred texts to cinema, television shows, cartoon, literature. They are writing a text that is rich with allusions, and it demands a highly literate and engaged viewer.
We can even see the philosophical tension of the show, reflected in how fans critique its most famous special features, the Treehouse of Horror episodes.
Yes. The earliest Treehouse of Horror specials focused on general genre tropes. They were parodies of the style and atmosphere of things like The Hour Limits or The Twilight Zone.
So they created original stories within those classic frameworks.
Exactly. But as the show progressed, the sources noted change. Later specials shifted toward more direct, often minute-by-minute parodies of specific famous films.
And many longtime fans cite this shift as a point of quality decline.
They do. When you stop commenting on the genre and you start simply retelling a specific movie like a beat-for-beat parody of The Shining, the satire loses its intellectual edge and it just becomes mere referencing.
That earlier trope-based brilliance is captured perfectly in the segment Nightmare on Evergreen Terrace, which is clearly rooted in the Nightmare on Elm Street concept.
Groundskeeper Willie is the star there, attacking the children in their sleep. And his jokes are pure gold. His methods often rely on wordplay connected to his Scottish origins or his profession.
Right, like chasing Bart as a lawnmower, threatening him with compost mortem.
The layered absurdity is just phenomenal.
Beyond the screen, the show has literally redefined language. A director at the Linguistic Data Consortium, Mark Lieberman, stated that The Simpsons has surpassed figures like Shakespeare and the Bible as our culture's greatest source of idioms, catchphrases, and allusions.
That is not just hyperbole. It's a statement about our modern cultural literacy.
And the most powerful evidence of this is the word dough, which has officially entered the Oxford English Dictionary.
And crucially, it's entered without the apostrophe, recognizing it as a generalized expression of annoyance or frustration, not just a character-specific line.
Furthermore, this influence created a true insider culture. Enthusiasts developed what has been called a secret language, consisting entirely of Simpsons quotes.
If you know the reference, you belong. If you don't, you're out. It just shows the depth of the shared knowledge required to participate fully in the show's fan community.
We've established that The Simpsons is great satire, but what is its political heart? While it definitely satirizes incompetence across the political spectrum, left and right sources confirm that commentators and producers, like Al Jean, admit the show generally leans toward a liberal or progressive bent.
Well, the defining political feature of the show is its anti-establishment bias. They consistently portray nearly every major institution as flawed, corrupt, or actively malicious.
You mean like Mayor Quimby, the perpetually corrupt politician, or the police?
Or Mr. Burns and the nuclear power plant, who constantly exploit the citizens of Springfield. These are not subtle caricatures. They are clear statements that authority figures, politicians, police, large corporations are inherently incompetent or evil entities focused only on exploiting the average citizen like Homer.
And this progressive bias is channeled most clearly through Lisa Simpson. She's the most intellectually and politically developed character.
She is the show's conscience, a vocal advocate for environmentalism, vegetarianism, and feminism. She is the voice of reasoned, progressive thought in a town that's defined by low-brow chaos.
Homer, on the other hand, is often used to satirize incompetence or misplaced populist rage. His brief time as sanitation commissioner saw him become this dishonest populist politician, making absurd promises he couldn't possibly keep.
He represents the easily distracted, often selfish voter.
And the institutional critique extends directly to the public education system, primarily via Springfield Elementary. It's used to satirize authority, administrative bureaucracy, and the apathy that can plague teachers.
Oh, yeah. Teachers like Miss Hoover are often portrayed as completely worn down by the system, incompetent, or just profoundly uninterested in the well-being of their students.
Miss Hoover has joked about day drinking during lunch.
She has. And standardized testing and bloated curricula are frequent, easy targets of the show's satire.
Okay, so we've established that the domestic satire is sharp. But here's where the show steps onto a true geopolitical minefield. When The Simpsons aims its lens at foreign countries, the satire often lands with a thud, causing significant international disputes.
This is where the comedy writer's intent clashes violently with national pride and, historical sensitivities, and the examples are abundant and severe.
Let's start with the 1995 episode, Bart versus Australia. This caused a huge controversy because it presented Australia as a backward, boorish, alcohol-obsessed nation with criminal tendencies.
The reaction was so poor that creator Matt Groening and voice actress Yeardley Smith both had to issue public apologies.
Next up, the 2002 Brazil controversy. Blame It on Lisa portrayed Rio de Janeiro as a hive of rampant street crime, kidnappings, slums, and severe infestations of monkeys and rats.
The reaction from the tourism industry was furious. Rio's tourist board threatened legal action, having just invested millions to promote the city internationally.
The Brazilian president found the episode to be a distorted vision of Brazilian reality.
And while producer James L. Brooks offered a standard apology to the lovely city of Rio de Janeiro, he couldn't resist a classic Simpsons satirical report.
What did he say?
He added that if the apology wasn't sufficient, Homer Simpson offered to fight the Brazilian president on celebrity boxing. That perfect blend of sincerity and mockery is just peak Simpsons.
It really is. But the controversy in Argentina over the 2008 episode, E Pluribus Vigum, dealt with much darker, more sensitive historical trauma.
It centered on a single line of dialogue. Carl Carlson, when considering candidates, mentioned he could use a military dictator like Juan Perón, adding the joke, "When he disappeared you, you stayed disappeared."
A line that directly references the Argentinian dirty war of the 1970s and 80s, a period of state terrorism where thousands of political dissidents were systematically abducted and killed, the so-called disappeared.
The wounds from this period are still very raw. The uproar was immediate. A former congressman stated that the program caused great harm because the disappearances were an open wound.
And while an Argentine government committee ultimately rejected a request to ban the episode on freedom of speech grounds, the fallout was unique.
Fox stepped in and self-censored. In a highly unusual move, Fox chose not to air the episode anywhere in Latin America, explicitly to avoid reopening wounds very painful to Argentina.
So it was a corporate decision to avoid causing further offense, even when legally permitted to broadcast.
Exactly. And we saw this political tension continue into the streaming era with China. The season 16 episode, Gugu Gai Pan, was highly critical of the Chinese government.
It contained pointed references to the 1989 Tiananmen Square protests.
Specifically, there is a shot of a plaque in the square that reads, Tiananmen Square. On this site in 1989, nothing happened.
Which is a direct, cutting, satirical comment on the Chinese government's official censorship regarding the massacre.
So, when Disney Plus launched in Hong Kong in 2021, that specific episode was conspicuously pulled from the streaming service. This confirms that the show's political commentary continues to attract state-level censorship and demonstrates the immense geopolitical pressure on IP holders like Disney.
Let's pivot now from global politics to the deep, granular world of Springfield lore, the stuff only dedicated fans truly appreciate. This is where we uncover the strange internal logic that keeps the show running. Let's start with Artie Ziff.
Artie Ziff. Marge's wealthy, awkward former suitor.
He's a perfect caricature of early tech wealth and moral emptiness. We learned he became extremely wealthy during the dot-com boom, not through something revolutionary, but through one single, absurdly specific invention.
An adapter that converts the annoying, grating noise of dial-up modem handshaking into relaxing, easy-listening music.
That level of specificity is what makes the joke work. It's totally useless, yet it made him a fortune. But his wealth didn't last.
No, it didn't. He squandered his money, leading to a massive accounting scandal at his company, Ziff Corp. And his move to escape prosecution is the quintessential Artie Ziff move pure moral bankruptcy and legal maneuvering.
He attempts to scapegoat Homer.
Of course he does. He sets up a rigged poker game where he deliberately allows Homer to win 98% of the company's stock, thereby making Homer the legally liable majority shareholder for all of Artie's deceit.
He tries to pin his entire corporate crime on Homer's incompetence.
And it takes Marge's fierce moral criticism to finally get him to confess his guilt.
Now, let's discuss one of the most foundational and darkest episodes in the show's history. The introduction and death of Frank Grimes Sr., or Grimey.
The story Frank Grimes is essential because it establishes the true law of physics in the Springfield universe. Grimes is the ultimate audience surrogate. He's this 35-year-old consummate professional who struggled through hardship, working hard for everything he has.
And he arrives at the plant and is immediately confronted by Homer's incredible, inexplicable idiocy, laziness, and gluttony, which is constantly rewarded.
Grimes represents competence, meritocracy, and hard work. Homer represents chaotic, rewarded incompetence. Their conflict is existential.
Grimes just cannot cope with the sheer irrational unfairness of Homer's existence.
He can't. He snaps, declares Homer his enemy, runs amok, grabs 2 high-voltage wires, and dies instantly.
And the final insult. Homer sleeps right through Grimes's funeral, wakes up, and then loudly amuses the assembled mourners with some idiotic remark as the coffin is being lowered.
It is the show's definitive statement that in Springfield, chaos reigns, the system is irrational, and competence is punished with death.
Wow. Okay, moving to Herman Herman, the one-armed owner of the military antique store, a brilliant military tactician.
And his character lore demonstrates the writers playing with continuity as a joke early on.
Right. When Bart first asks how he lost his arm, Herman gives this extremely plausible yet silly story. He implies he stuck it out the window of a school bus.
But the sources confirm that later, a flashback revealed he lost his arm hitchhiking when he was sideswiped by an animal control van. Matt Groening later explained that the original intention was that Herman would give a different explanation every time he appeared.
So the inconsistency was the running gag.
It was supposed to be. They didn't fully commit to the joke, though, resulting in just 2 competing histories.
This brings us to Homer Simpson himself, who, despite being the embodiment of incompetence, harbors a deep, secret genius. We know his low IQ is attributed to a crayon lodged in his brain.
Mm-hmm.
But the writers dropped a fascinating piece of scientific trivia that's just profound latent genius. In the season 10 episode, The Wizard of Evergreen Terrace, Homer attempts to become a great inventor. At one point, he writes an equation on a chalkboard.
And that equation is extremely close to solving the mass of the Higgs boson.
The Higgs boson, the particle essential to the standard model of particle physics, which wasn't actually discovered and confirmed until 2012.
Exactly. Homer wrote that equation in 1998, 14 years before its actual discovery. It's a remarkable, verifiable, deep-cut joke placed there by the mathematically inclined writing staff.
It demonstrates that even the show's most idiotic character possesses this hidden intellectual capacity that only emerges when the crayon is removed, or when he's subconsciously trying to prove himself.
Speaking of serious medical lore, there's the fact Marge kept secret for decades. Homer's proximity to nuclear radiation left him sterile.
Marge kept this secret for over 2 decades of their marriage.
She only reveals it in a later season when she expresses a hidden desire to have another child, leading her to confess that Homer was sterile and therefore any subsequent children would require adoption or some kind of intervention.
And finally, we have to address the controversial piece of fan theory lore, the idea that the entire run of the show after a specific point is essentially non-canonical.
This is the famed Homer coma theory. It posits that every episode aired after the clip show, so it's come to this. A Simpsons clip show takes place inside Homer's coma-induced brain.
Tell us how fans justify this one.
Well, it's supported by 2 main pieces of evidence. First, in the episode Homer the Heretic, God explicitly tells Homer he has 6 months left to live. The clip show, in which Homer is left in a vegetative state for 7 weeks after a prank gone wrong, airs almost exactly 6 months later.
That's surprisingly neat.
And second, the theory rationalizes why the characters never age, why continuity is often abandoned, and why Homer's personality has become more extreme and absurd in later seasons.
It's all explained as the irrational workings of a mind in stasis.
Exactly. It's the ultimate way for fans to reconcile the show's commitment to stagnation with its overwhelming longevity.
That is fantastic. And we cannot leave this section without mentioning Blinky, the three-eyed orange fish.
Mutated by the toxic waste from the Springfield nuclear power plant, Blinky became an iconographic symbol of environmental failure.
And he played a crucial role in Mr. Burns' political ambitions. When Burns ran for governor, Marge, supporting his opponent Mary Bailey, deliberately served the three-eyed fish to him during a dinner meant to boost his popularity. Burns spits the fish out in disgust, costing him the election. But his defense of the mutation was classic capitalist hubris. He argued that the extra eye was simply the next step in evolution, trying to rebrand environmental catastrophe as progress.
A show that runs for 37 seasons inevitably stratifies its own history. For critics and fans, the show is now divided into distinct eras, which leads to intense, sometimes bitter, debates over quality. So let's define the Golden Age.
The consensus is incredibly firm. The Golden Era consists of seasons 1 through 9, sometimes stretching to 10. This period is universally praised for its perfect balance of anarchic vulgarity, political intelligence, and crucial emotional depth.
And the subsequent decline is often specifically pinned on the tenure of one showrunner. Mike Scully, who managed the show from seasons 9 through 12, what was the specific critique of the Scully era?
Critics argued that under Scully's watch, the show abandoned its emotional core. It became what one critic described as just a cartoon. The emotional resonance was gone, sacrificed for escalating nonsensical gags.
The show lost its capacity to be touching. That's a great way to put it. Critics often noted that episodes in the Golden Age might end with Homer and Marge bicycling into the sunset, an emotional embrace after a conflict. Under Scully, episodes would end with Homer shooting a tranquilizer dart into Marge's neck just for a quick laugh.
So the characters started behaving wildly out of character, purely to service the final joke.
Exactly. And Mike Scully, understanding this tension between quality and longevity, offered a brilliant, cynical summation of his strategy. He joked that the secret to the show's incredible longevity was simple. Lower your quality standards. Once you've done that, you can go on forever.
That quote is basically the epitaph for the post-Golden Age era.
It really is.
But beyond the gradual decline debate, there are 2 specific episodes that caused massive internal creative conflicts, tearing the writers and voice actors apart. The first is arguably the single most controversial episode in the show's history, The Principal and the Pauper.
From season 9 in 1997.
This is the episode where it is revealed that Principal Seymour Skinner is actually an imposter named Armin Tamzarian, who stole the identity of the real Seymour Skinner during the Vietnam War.
The reaction from the audience was rage. They felt it was a complete betrayal of character development they had invested in for almost a decade, and the creators agreed with the fans.
Voice actor Harry Shearer, who voices Skinner, was furious.
He was. He publicly stated that the reveal was arbitrary and gratuitous and deeply disrespectful to the audience, arguing that they had essentially thrown away 9 years of audience investment in character history for a cheap twist that was immediately walked back by the end of the episode.
That kind of internal criticism shows how seriously they took the integrity of the show's canon, even as they simultaneously produced absurd, inconsistent storylines.
And the second major conflict involved creator Matt Groening himself, leading to a public feud with James L. Brooks. This occurred during season 6 with the episode A Star is Burned.
The crossover with the critic.
Exactly, a show Brooks also executive produced. Groening felt this was an unholy union. He publicly and fiercely criticized the episode.
What was his argument?
His core argument was philosophical. He believed the episode was purely an advertisement for the critic, and therefore violated the sanctity and internal logic of the Simpsons universe. He demanded his name be removed from the episode credits entirely.
And James L. Brooks, his co-executive producer, did not mince words in response.
No, he publicly called Groening's behavior rotten. This shows that even during the universally adored Golden Age, there were deep, fundamental philosophical battles over what The Simpsons was and what its limitations should be.
This deep dive has shown us that The Simpsons is less a cartoon and more a highly regulated, yet intensely volatile cultural machine. We've navigated the complexities of its 6-month creative lag that forces timeless writing, the tight political tightrope the show walks,
Which has caused real-world apologies.
and the intense, decades-long debate over when exactly the quality declined.
And we've uncovered the profound layers of lore, from the mathematical genius hidden by Homer's brain cran, to the philosophical implications of Frank Grimes's tragic fate, which cemented the rule of chaos in Springfield.
We even reconciled the show's endless timeline with the Homer coma fan theory.
We did.
And to leave you with one final perfect nugget that captures the show's capacity for complex emotional dynamics, let's look at Lisa's intellectual rival, Allison Taylor, introduced in season 6.
Allison was the perfect foil for Lisa. She was the one student who had also skipped a grade and seemed to genuinely threaten Lisa's status as the town's preeminent intellectual.
They spent the entire episode in this tense rivalry, only for that rivalry to culminate in them both losing the school competition. And who did they lose to?
Ralph Wiggum and his completely non sequitur Star Wars figurines.
And this is the brilliant part. They bond over this shared experience of failure and the absurdity of the unexpected winner. This subtle detail about competition, intellectual humility, and finding solidarity in shared disappointment perfectly reflects the show's willingness to find genuine meaning and humor in complex human dynamics.
Even when the winner is Ralph Wiggum.
We've tracked this property from its messy, litigious start on The Tracey Ullman Show all the way to its current status as a colossal, highly protected brand, archived meticulously on Disney Plus and sold as high-end promotional art.
And when we say high-end art, we're talking about Jacleo prints, which, for the uninitiated, are museum-quality inkjet prints used for fine art reproduction.
Often commanding prices between $185 and $625. This shows the seriousness of the cultural investment.
Absolutely.
Which raises our final provocative question for you to mull over. Considering the immense commercial investment in extending and archiving the Simpsons brand for decades to come, does the enduring myth of Springfield, flaws and all, ultimately hold more cultural value than the complex, sometimes compromised truth behind its production? And how much is that myth that shared secret language and history worth to you?